Before we begin, I'd like to ask you for a small favor. I'm really hoping to break through the magical barrier of 1,000 subscribers. That number holds a special significance for me. Hit that subscribe button. It's just one click. But for me, it's a huge boost of motivation to create my next video. Thank you in advance. Don't get involved in this. I won't let you hurt her. You're just an employee. That's enough. I'm the millionaire, not a gardener. This can't be. Are you all right? Thanks to you. I won't let you continue with this. Madam, she plans to poison her. This can't be true. Stop right now. I won't let them ruin my plans. It's the truth, madam. My son. Yes, mother, it's me. Don't get involved in this. I won't let you hurt her. You'll regret this. Stop now. I am your son. I disguised myself to protect her. You're the millionaire. My God, my son, you're here. The millionaire disguised himself as a gardener until the employee saved his mother from his fiancé. A starving woman like you will never set foot on the marble of this house with your head held high, Isabel Montenegro shouted, and the slap that followed echoed in the kitchen like a gunshot that no servant would ever forget. Lucia Hernandez didn't cry. At 24, she had learned that tears were a luxury that poor women couldn't afford in front of the rich. She brought her hand to her burning cheek, tasted the metallic tang of blood on her split lip, and met the gaze of that beautiful and cruel woman, her green eyes, which made her stand out so much, never faltering. "Excuse me, Miss Isabel," she said, her voice firm, though she trembled inside. "It won't happen again. It won't happen again." Isabel let out a sharp laugh, adjusting her designer red dress that cost more than everything Lucia would earn in 5 years. "Of course, it won't happen again, because I'll make sure you don't last even a week in this mansion. Servants like you are interchangeable. There are hundreds of starving women lining up at the door." It was her first day at the mansion of the Velázquez family, one of Mexico's oldest fortunes. And Lucia already understood that this place of high ceilings and crystal chandeliers hid something rotten beneath the gleam of gold. She had arrived that morning with only a cloth bag and the crumpled letter of recommendation from her previous employer, a kind widow who had died and left her jobless. Necessity had pushed her to that wrought iron door. Her mother was sick in the village. Medicines were expensive, and this job, no matter how humiliating, meant food, shelter, and the chance to send money home. The crime that had unleashed Isabel's fury was ridiculous. Lucia had dropped a crystal glass while cleaning the dining room display cabinet. A single glass. But for Isabel Montenegro, the heir's fiancé, that had been enough excuse to unleash the venom she carried within. "Pick up the pieces," Isabel ordered, pointing to the floor with the tip of her high-heeled shoe. "And when you're done, you'll clean all the upstairs bathrooms with your hands. No gloves, so you learn your place." Lucia knelt in silence and began to gather the glass fragments. One of them cut her finger, but she made no sound. "Bite your teeth," she told herself. Hold on for Mom. What neither Isabel nor Lucia knew was that the entire scene was being observed. From the garden, through the large floor-to-ceiling window, a man in a green jumpsuit and a gardener's cap watched the scene with clenched fists. Gardening tools hung from his belt. His hands were stained with dirt, and at first glance, he was nothing more than a maintenance worker, an invisible man whom the rich never noticed. But this man was no gardener. His name was Mateo Velázquez. He was 32 years old and the sole heir to the entire fortune that sustained that mansion. 3 weeks ago, he had made a decision that his late father would have approved of, to disguise himself as a gardener and work incognito in his own home to discover the truth, because something told him that the woman he was about to marry was not who she appeared to be. His mother, Doña Esperanza Velázquez, an elderly woman with silver hair and a soft heart, insisted that Isabel was an angel, the perfect wife, a blessing to the family. But Mateo had noticed things: small cracks, glances Isabel threw when she thought no one was looking, a coldness that peeked through her sugary smile. So he had grown a beard, asked his trusted butler, the only one who knew his secret, to introduce him as Mateo, the new gardener, and had settled among the rose bushes to observe. His fiancée hadn't even looked him in the face in 3 weeks. To her, he didn't exist. He was part of the scenery, like the pots and fountains, and that morning the scenery had witnessed his future wife slap a helpless girl over a broken glass. Mateo took a step towards the kitchen door, ready to intervene, to reveal who he was, to put Isabel in her place once and for all. But he stopped. No, not yet. If he revealed his identity now, Isabel would put on her mask again, and he would never know the whole truth. He needed to see how far she was capable of going. He clenched his jaw and forced himself to wait. Inside, Lucia finished picking up the glass, stood up with her bleeding finger and swollen cheek, and walked to the upper floor to serve her punishment. As she passed by the window, her green eyes met those of the gardener for an instant. It was only a second, but in that second, Lucia saw something that disconcerted her. That humble man in the green jumpsuit looked at her with an intensity that didn't fit his position. It wasn't the gaze of a servant. It was the gaze of someone who felt, who was indignant, who truly saw her. Lucia looked away, confused, and continued on her way. Upstairs, while scrubbing the bathroom tiles with an old rag, she heard voices. She crept to the crack in the door and saw Doña Esperanza, the matriarch, sitting in her wheelchair by the hallway window. The elderly woman's face was etched with wrinkles and a tired sweetness in her eyes. Isabel stood before her, her tone completely changed. She was no longer shouting. Now she spoke in a sweet, cloying, false voice. "Dear Doña Esperanza, have you taken your morning medicine yet?" Isabel asked, holding a pill bottle. "Yes, my daughter. The nurse already gave it to me," the elderly woman replied with a fragile smile. "That's good," said Isabel. And for a moment, Lucia saw the fiancé's smile twist into something strange, something calculating, as she put the bottle in her dress pocket. "You just rest. I'll take care of everything." There was something in that phrase, "I'll take care of everything," that sent a chill down Lucia's spine, without her being able to explain why. That night, when the mansion finally slept, Lucia lay down in the service quarters assigned to her, a tiny room without windows, with a hard cot and a single bulb. She thought of her mother, of the money she needed to send, and thought, unintentionally, of the gardener's gaze behind the window. She didn't sleep well. At 3 in the morning, she heard footsteps in the service hallway, footsteps that shouldn't be there. She peeked through the crack in her door and saw a silhouette moving towards the kitchen with a small flashlight. It was Isabel. What was the heir's fiancé doing lurking in the service areas in the dead of night, dressed in black, hiding like a thief? Lucia held her breath. She watched as Isabel took something from the pocket of her black robe, a small bottle identical to Doña Esperanza's medicine, and placed it on the marble countertop. Then she took out a second bottle, this one with a clear liquid, and began to pour a few drops into the first, with chilling precision, like someone who had done it many times. The flashlight's beam trembled on her face, and for a moment, Lucia could see her expression. There was no anger, no emotion, just the cold calculation of someone planning something in the dark. When she finished, Isabel put the second bottle away, carefully closed the first, and slipped it back into her robe pocket. She turned off the flashlight and disappeared upstairs without making a sound, like a ghost. Lucia remained motionless on her cot for a long time, her heart pounding against her ribs. What had she just seen? She was tampering with the elderly woman's medicine. Or was it her imagination, a product of fatigue and fear from her first day? No, it wasn't imagination. She had seen it with her own eyes. Her instincts told her she was witnessing the beginning of something terrible, something that if she wasn't careful, could cost her more than her job, could cost her her life, and worse still, could cost the life of that innocent elderly woman sleeping upstairs, unaware that the woman she called daughter was plotting her end in the shadows. At dawn, the gardener was already among the rose bushes when Lucia went out to throw out the trash. They were alone for a moment, separated only by a hedge of flowers. "Good morning," he said, removing his cap with a gesture of respect that no rich person had ever shown her. "Good morning," she replied, surprised. "I saw what happened yesterday," Matteo said in a low voice. "The slap wasn't right. No one deserves that." Lucia felt a lump in her throat. He was the first person in that house who treated her like a human being. "I'm used to it," she lied, shrugging. "Well, you shouldn't be," he replied, looking at her with those dark eyes that hid a secret as big as the entire Velasquez fortune. Lucia didn't know it yet, but she had just made an ally who would change her destiny forever. And together, without realizing it yet, they were about to unmask the most dangerous woman who had ever set foot in that mansion. What would come next, neither of them could have foreseen. Lucia didn't sleep a wink for the rest of the night. The image of Isabel pouring drops into the medicine bottle had lodged in her mind like a splinter. The next morning, while serving breakfast in the grand dining room, she observed every movement of the fiancé with an attention she tried hard to conceal. Isabel, seated at the head of the table as if she were already the absolute owner of the house, buttered a piece of toast with the elegance of a queen. She wore an impeccable cream-colored dress, her hair styled perfectly, and a porcelain smile that didn't reach her eyes. Take Doña Esperanza's tea to her room, and make sure she takes all her medicine, all of it. Understood, Lucia said without looking at her. Yes, miss, Lucia replied, feeling a shiver. She took the tray upstairs with careful hands. Upon entering the elderly woman's room, she found Doña Esperanza sitting by the window, gazing at the garden with a blanket over her legs. The morning light softened the wrinkles on her face and gave her a touching air of fragility. Good morning, Doña Esperanza, Lucia said sweetly. I've brought your tea. The elderly woman turned, and seeing the young girl's face, smiled with a warmth Lucia hadn't received in that house. What a lovely girl, said Doña Esperanza. You're new. I haven't seen you before. Yes, madam. I arrived yesterday. My name is Lucia. Lucia. What a beautiful name. It means light, did you know? The elderly woman extended a trembling hand and took Lucia's. You have the eyes of a good person, child. There are few good people in this house anymore. Those words, spoken with sadness, confirmed Lucia's suspicions. She looked at the medicine bottle on the nightstand. It was the same bottle Isabel had manipulated in the early morning. Lucia discreetly picked it up and examined it. The pills looked normal at first glance, but she clearly remembered the drops Isabel had poured. How long have you been taking these medicines? Doña Esperanza asked cautiously. Oh, my daughter, for months. They're for my heart. I used to feel very strong, but for a few weeks now, I don't know, I feel weaker and weaker, more tired. The doctor says it's her age, but I, the old woman, lowered my voice. I feel something isn't right. Lucia pressed her lips together. The pieces were starting to fall into place in the worst possible way. Who gives you your medicine? Erie asked. The nurse used to, but Isabel fired her last week. She said she would take care of me herself, that she was family now. Doña Esperanza sighed. I want to believe she takes care of me with love. My son Mateo adores her. He's going to marry her, but sometimes when we're alone, she treats me differently, speaks to me harshly, says things that hurt me, and then when people are around, she's sweet again. Sometimes I think I'm going crazy, that it's just old age fantasies. She's not crazy, Lucia said firmly, unable to hold back. I believe you. The old woman's eyes filled with tears. You're the first person who's believed me, child. Meanwhile, in the garden, Mateo was pruning the rose bushes with mechanical movements, but his mind was elsewhere. From his position, he could see the window of his mother's room. He saw the silhouette of Lucia leaning tenderly towards Doña Esperanza, holding her hand, speaking to her with a sweetness he hadn't seen in Isabel even once in their 2 years of dating. Something stirred in his chest, a warm, unsettling sensation. You really enjoy the flowers, don't you? Isabel's sharp voice startled him. She had come out into the garden and was approaching with a firm step, shielding herself from the sun with a white parasol. Mateo lowered his head, hiding his face under his cap. Yes, ma'am. The roses need care. Well, stop wasting your time staring at windows and do your job, Isabel snapped. That's what you're paid for. And another thing, the new maid, the one with green eyes. Have you seen her lurking around here? Mateo's heart pounded. Why was Isabel asking about Lucia? No, ma'am. I just take care of the garden. You'd better. That girl looks like a busybody, and busybodies don't last long in this house. Isabel narrowed her eyes. Let me know if you see her snooping where she shouldn't. I'll give you a good tip. Understood, gardener? As you say, Mateo mumbled, boiling with rage inside. Isabel turned around and returned to the house with her parasol. Mateo followed her with his gaze. Now he was sure. Isabel saw Lucia as a threat, and if Isabel wanted to get rid of Lucia, it was because the green-eyed girl had seen something Isabel didn't want known. That afternoon, Mateo found an opportunity to speak with Lucia alone. The girl had gone out to hang laundry in the backyard, away from the prying eyes of the house. Lucia, he called softly, approaching her among the hanging sheets. She startled. Oh, you scared me. What do you want? I have to warn you about something. Miss Isabel asked about you today. She asked me to let her know if I saw you snooping where you shouldn't. Mateo looked at her seriously. Whatever you've seen, be careful. That woman is dangerous. Lucia observed him for a long moment. There was something about that gardener that didn't fit. The way he spoke was too refined. His hands, though stained with dirt, didn't have the calluses of a laborer, and his gaze had the confidence of a man accustomed to giving orders, not obeying. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You don't know me, and if Isabel finds out you warned me, she'll fire you too." Matteo hesitated. He was about to tell her everything, to confess who he was, but he held back. "Let's just say I can't stand injustice," he replied. "And because yesterday, when that woman hit you, I saw you didn't back down. That takes courage, more courage than many of the rich people in this house have." Lucia felt herself blush. She lowered her gaze to the sheets. "I saw something last night," she confessed in a whisper. "Something bad. But if I tell you, and you don't believe me, you'll think I'm crazy." "I will believe you," Matteo said, with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "Tell me." Lucia took a deep breath and told him everything. The footsteps in the early morning, Isabel's silhouette in the kitchen, the medicine bottle, the drops of clear liquid. She also told him what Doña Esperanza had confessed. The increasing weakness, the dismissal of the nurse, the mistreatment in secret. As he listened, Matteo's face darkened. Each word was a dagger. The woman he was going to marry was slowly poisoning her own mother for the inheritance, for the Velasquez fortune. "Are you sure of what you saw?" he asked, his voice trembling with contained rage. "As sure as I'm standing here," Lucia replied. "I saw her pour the drops. I saw her face. It wasn't the face of someone caring for the sick. It was the face of someone who wanted her dead." Matteo closed his eyes. He needed proof. The word of a maid and the suspicions of an old woman were not enough. If he accused Isabel without proof, she would play the victim, manipulate him as she had manipulated everyone, and perhaps accelerate her plans against Doña Esperanza. "Listen to me carefully, Lucia," he said, taking her by the shoulders. "Don't tell anyone anything, anyone, understand? Not even Doña Esperanza. We need proof, real proof. If we act prematurely, Isabel will win, and your life and the ladies will be in danger. We need," Lucia repeated, frowning. "Why are you speaking in the plural? Who are you, really?" Matteo let go of her and took a step back. For a moment, the mask threatened to fall. "I am someone who wants the same thing as you," he said finally. "Justice for that old woman. Trust me, you'll understand everything soon." That night, Lucia went to bed with more questions than answers. Who was this gardener who spoke like a gentleman and looked like an owner? Why did he care so much about Doña Esperanza's fate? And, most importantly, why did her heart race every time those dark eyes looked at her? She didn't know, but she knew one thing. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone in her struggle. And together, the mysterious gardener and the green-eyed maid were going to unmask the serpent that had infiltrated their home. What neither of them imagined was that Isabel, from her bedroom window, had seen them talking among the hanging sheets, and in her cold, calculating mind, a wicked idea began to take shape. If the meddlesome maid and the intrusive gardener wanted to interfere in her affairs, then both of them would have to disappear. The next morning, Isabel came downstairs with a smile that chilled the blood. Dressed in impeccable white, she looked like a bride ahead of her wedding. But Lucia already knew that behind that angelic image hid a viper. "Lucia," Isabel said, her voice sweet. "Too sweet. I've decided to give you a new responsibility. From today on, you will be in charge of giving Doña Esperanza her medicine 3 times a day. I'm very busy with the wedding preparations." Lucia felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Why was Isabel entrusting her with precisely that task? It was a trap. If the old woman worsened, or worse, Lucia would be solely responsible. The new maid, with no witnesses, no alibi, the perfect culprit. "But ma'am," she dared to say, "shouldn't a nurse be in charge? I don't know anything about medicine." "You don't need to know anything," Isabel cut her off. And for a second, her smile vanished, revealing the sharpness beneath. "You just give her the pills from the bottle. 1 in the morning, 1 at noon, 1 at night. Is that so difficult? Or do today's maids not even know how to do that?" "No, ma'am. I'll do it." "That's what I expect." Isabel came so close that Lucia could smell her expensive perfume. "And if anything happens to the lady under your care, well, you know what happens to negligent servants. Prison is full of girls like you." The threat hung in the air. Isabel turned on her heels and left, leaving Lucia trembling by the stairs. It's brilliant, Lucia thought with horror. Isabel was handing her the murder weapon so she would commit it unknowingly. If Lucia gave Doña Esperanza those pills, she would be complicit in the poisoning, and if she refused, she would be fired and leave the old woman defenseless in the hands of the murderer. She needed to speak with the gardener urgently. She found him in the greenhouse at the back of the garden, transplanting orchids. Seeing her enter with a distressed face, Matteo immediately put down his tools. "What happened?" he asked. Lucia told him about Isabel's new order, the trap, the threat. "She wants me to give her the poison," she said, her voice breaking. "And if I refuse, she'll fire me. What do I do? If I give her those pills, I'm an accomplice to a murderer, but if I leave, Doña Esperanza will be alone with her." Matteo clenched his fists. Isabel's cold plan sickened him, but he also finally saw an opportunity. "You're not going to give her the poison," he said calmly. "You're going to give her the pills, yes, but not from the bottle Isabel tampered with." Lucia looked at him, uncomprehending. "Listen to me carefully," Matteo continued. "Today, I'm going to get an identical bottle with the real heart medication that Doña Esperanza needs, the one prescribed by her doctor. You're going to switch the contents of the poisoned bottle with the real pills. You'll give Doña Esperanza the good ones, and we'll keep the poisoned ones as evidence." As evidence. Lucia's green eyes lit up as she understood. If we keep the pills she altered, and have them analyzed. Exactly. We'll have the evidence we need, a laboratory analysis to prove the medication was contaminated. With that, Isabel won't be able to play the victim. The proof will speak for itself. For the first time in days, Lucia felt a ray of hope, but a question still lingered in her mind. And how are you, a gardener, going to get heart medication, pay for a laboratory analysis? That costs money, a lot of money. Matteo was silent for a moment. "I have savings," he lied clumsily, "and a friend who works at a pharmacy. Don't worry about it. You focus on protecting the lady." Lucia wasn't entirely convinced, but she nodded. She had no alternative. This mysterious man was her only ally. That same afternoon, Matteo disappeared for 2 hours. He left the mansion through the service door, got into an old van he had parked a few blocks away, part of his disguise, and drove to a private pharmacy downtown. There, using his personal card discreetly, he purchased the exact medication his mother's cardiologist had prescribed, as well as an identical empty bottle. He also made a call to a laboratory he trusted, ordering an urgent and discreet analysis. When he returned, he handed Lucia the bottle with the real medication in a fleeting encounter by the shed. "Make the switch tonight when everyone's asleep," he instructed. "Empty the poisoned bottle into this little bag." He gave her a small plastic bag with a zip closure and fill the original bottle with these good pills. At first glance, no one will notice the difference. That night, as the mansion slept, Lucia crept to Doña Esperanza's room, her heart in her throat. The old woman was sleeping deeply. Her breathing was frail and ragged. Lucia took the bottle from the bedside table, opened it, and with trembling hands, emptied the poisoned pills into the plastic bag. Then she filled the bottle with the real medication and closed it. She was about to leave when the old woman's voice startled her. "Lucia," Doña Esperanza murmured, opening her eyes. "Is it you, my child?" "Yes, ma'am," Lucia whispered, hiding the bag in her apron pocket. "I just came to check on you. Do you need anything? Water?" The old woman smiled in the dim light. "You're an angel," she said. "You know, last night I dreamed of my husband, who rests in peace. He told me someone would soon arrive at the house to save us all. A light." He took Lucia's hand. "I think that light is you, child." Lucia's eyes filled with tears. She squeezed the old woman's wrinkled hand. "I will take care of her, Doña Esperanza. I promise you, no matter what." What neither of them knew was that on the other side of the door, a shadow was listening. Isabel, who had gotten up for a drink of water, had seen the faint light under the old woman's bedroom door. She crept closer and pressed her ear to the wood. She couldn't hear everything, but she heard enough. "I'll take care of her, no matter what." The nosy maid's voice in the old woman's room in the dead of night. Isabel's eyes narrowed with fury. That green-eyed girl was getting too involved. She was forming a bond with Doña Esperanza, and that was unacceptable. If the old woman came to trust the maid more than her entire plan could crumble. Isabel returned to her room with a determined stride, picked up her phone and dialed a number. A gruff, masculine voice answered. "Fernando," Isabel said in a low voice, "I need you to expedite things. There's a complication. A nosy maid who's getting too close to the old woman." She paused. "No, not yet. But if she keeps this up, she'll ruin everything. I need a plan to get rid of her. Something clean, something that looks like an accident or a robbery." The voice on the other end murmured something. "Perfect," Isabel replied with a cruel smile. You handle the inheritance documents, I'll handle the old woman, and the meddling creature." She hung up and went to bed, satisfied, unaware that the pills poisoning Doña Esperanza were no longer in the bottle, that every dose the old woman would take from that night on was pure, true, healing medicine, and that the lady's health, instead of continuing to deteriorate, would begin to improve, which, ironically, would be the first visible crack in Isabel's perfect plan. The next morning, Lucia handed Mateo the small bag with the poisoned pills in the garden. "Here's the proof," she said. "Are you sure your friend at the lab can analyze them?" "Absolutely," Mateo replied, carefully tucking the bag away. "In a few days we'll have the results, and then Isabel will fall." They looked into each other's eyes. There was something more than complicity in that exchange, something neither of them dared to name yet. "Lucia," Mateo said suddenly, "thank you for risking so much, for an old woman who isn't even your family." "Doña Esperanza treated me with kindness from the very first day," she replied. "In this house, where everyone sees me as trash, she saw me as a person. That's priceless." She paused and looked at him. "And you too. You've treated me well, even though I still don't know who you really are." Mateo smiled, and for an instant, Lucia saw something in that smile that took her breath away. A nobility, an elegance that belonged to no gardener in the world. "You'll know soon," he said. "I promise you." But time was running out, because while they were weaving their plan to save Doña Esperanza, Isabel was already weaving hers to destroy them both. And the silent war being waged in that mansion was about to erupt into broad daylight. The days passed, and something extraordinary began to happen at the Velázquez mansion. Doña Esperanza started to improve. Color returned to her cheeks. The weakness that had confined her to a wheelchair for weeks began to dissipate. One morning, to the astonishment of all the staff, the old woman got up on her own. She walked to the window, leaning only lightly on her cane, and asked for her breakfast to be served in the garden under the sun. "I feel like new," she exclaimed, breathing in the fresh morning air. "I haven't felt this strong in months. It must be this air, these beautiful flowers the gardener tends." Isabel, who was having breakfast beside her, almost choked on her coffee. She watched the old woman with a mixture of disbelief and barely concealed rage. How was this possible? The doses were still the same, the bottle was still in its place, and yet, the old woman, instead of fading, was blossoming like the roses in the garden. How marvelous, Doña Esperanza," Isabel said with a forced smile. "Although you shouldn't exert yourself so much. At your age, exertion can be dangerous. Don't you prefer to rest in your room?" "No resting," the old woman replied, with an energy she hadn't had in weeks. "I'm tired of being confined. Today, I want to live. Lucia, my dear, will you join me for a walk in the garden?" "With pleasure, madam," Lucia replied, suppressing a smile. Isabel watched them walk away, the old woman arm in arm with the maid, laughing like two old friends, and in her cold mind, alarms went off. Something had gone wrong, terribly wrong, and she was sure that green-eyed maid had something to do with it. In the garden, Doña Esperanza walked slowly, arm in arm with Lucia, pausing to admire every flower. Mateo, who was pruning some nearby bushes, looked up as he saw them. His heart clenched with emotion at seeing his mother standing, strong, smiling, alive. For weeks, he had feared losing her. And now, thanks to that girl, his mother was herself again. "Gardener," Doña Esperanza called out, "come here." Mateo approached, lowering his head respectfully. "Yes, madam. Your flowers have healed me, young man," the old woman said, her eyes shining. "God bless you. You have hands of an angel." Mateo felt a lump in his throat. His mother didn't recognize him behind the beard, cap, and overalls. She spoke to him like any servant, and yet, in her words, there was all the love he remembered from his childhood. "Thank you, Doña Esperanza," he murmured, moved. "It is an honor for me to care for the flowers of this house." The old woman looked at Lucia, then at the gardener, and a mischievous spark glinted in her tired eyes. "What a lovely couple you two would make," she said suddenly. Lucia blushed to her ears. "Doña Esperanza, what are you saying?" "Oh, my dear, I'm old, not blind," the old woman laughed. "I've seen how you look at each other, just like my late husband and I did when we were young. Love can't be hidden, child, not even with all the uniforms in the world." Mateo and Lucia looked at each other, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Both looked away, blushing, while Doña Esperanza laughed, pleased. That afternoon, After the old woman retired to rest, Matteo and Lucia met again in the greenhouse. The air was heavy with the sweet perfume of flowers and something else, something neither of them dared to name. Your mother, Doña Esperanza, is much better, Lucia said, breaking the silence. The medicine change worked. Yes, Matteo replied, looking at her with a tenderness that made her tremble. And it's all thanks to you. You saved Lucia's life. If you hadn't seen Isabel that night, and hadn't had the courage to act, my lady would already be dead. Lucia noticed the slip, but said nothing. We did it together, she replied. You got the medicines. I just followed your instructions. Don't take away your credit, he said, taking a step towards her. You're the bravest woman I've ever met, and the kindest. In a world full of people like Isabel, finding someone like you is a miracle. They were so close that Lucia could feel the warmth of his body. Her green eyes met his dark ones, and for an eternal moment, it seemed they were about to kiss. But Lucia pulled back, her heart galloping. I can't, she whispered. You're a mystery, Mr. Gardner. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you come from. You speak like a rich man. You have money for medicines and lab tests, and you hide behind overalls. How can I give you my heart to someone who won't even tell me his truth? Matteo lowered his gaze. She was right, and it pained him deeply to lie to her. Lucia, there are things I still can't tell you, not because I don't want to, but because doing so now would endanger everything we're trying to achieve. But I swear to you, by my father's memory, that very soon you will know the whole truth, and when you do, you'll understand why I had to hide. I only ask one thing, trust me a little more. Lucia looked at him for a long time. Every fiber of her common sense told her to be wary, but her heart told her something else. I trust you, she finally said. God help me, but I trust you. At that moment, the greenhouse door burst open. It was Isabel, her face flushed with fury. So, here you were, she shouted. The maid and the gardener, hiding like two rats. This is what you do during work hours. Flirting on my property. Lucia took a step back, but Matteo remained firm. We were just talking about the garden, miss, he said calmly. Don't lie to me, you beggar, Isabel exploded. She approached Lucia and pointed at her, her finger trembling with rage. And you filthy maid, I've been watching you. You sneak into Doña Esperanza's room at odd hours. You fill her head with ideas. You whisper who knows what to her. What do you intend? To take the Velasquez inheritance by worming your way into the old woman's heart. I intend nothing, miss, Lucia replied with dignity. I'm just taking care of her. Your job is to clean floors and shut up. Isabel raised her hand to slap her again, but this time a firm hand stopped her wrist in midair. It was Matteo. Don't touch her, he said, his voice so deep and authoritative that for a moment Isabel froze. That wasn't the voice of a gardener. It was the voice of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Isabel looked at him, bewildered. Something in those dark eyes seemed unsettlingly familiar, but she couldn't place it. How dare you lay a hand on me, servant? She spat, wrenching herself free violently. Are you fired? Both of you are fired from my house right now. This is not your house yet, Miss Isabel, Matteo replied coldly. And employees are hired and fired by the Velasquez family, not you. Isabel was struck dumb with rage. In 2 years, no servant had ever spoken to her like that. For a moment, she felt a fear, an irrational fear, as if the gardener knew something she didn't. This isn't over, she hissed. I'm going to talk to Doña Esperanza, and when I marry Matteo, the first thing I'll do is kick you both out. Enjoy your last days here, because I'm going to make your lives a living hell. She turned on her heels and stormed off, almost tripping over a planter at the entrance in her haste to leave. What Isabel didn't notice was that 2 of the kitchen staff, Rosa and Carmen, had witnessed part of the scene from the greenhouse door. The 2 women, who had worked in the mansion for years and had silently endured Isabel's contempt, exchanged a look of astonishment. They had never seen anyone stand up to the señor's fiancé, let alone a humble gardener. Did you see that? Whispered Rosa, a plump woman with hands calloused from work. The gardener grabbed Miss Isabel's hand, spoke to her as if he owned the house, and defended Lucia. Yes, replied Carmen, younger, with an admiring smile. Finally, someone takes that woman down a peg. God hear you, because that Isabel is the devil himself, in an expensive dress. The 2 quickly retreated before being discovered, but the gossip was already spreading. By lunchtime, all the staff knew that the gardener had defied Isabel, and though no one dared to say it aloud, on the tired faces of the servants, something was beginning to emerge that hadn't been felt in that house for a long time. Hope. When they were alone, Lucia breathed shakily. "She's just signed our death warrant," she said. "She'll find a way to destroy us." "Let her try," Matteo replied, though inwardly he knew the danger was real. "The lab results arrive in 2 days. We just have to hold on for 2 more days. Then everything will change." But 2 days in the hands of a woman like Isabel could feel like an eternity, and that very night, Isabel would secretly meet with Fernando to set in motion the cruelest plan of all. A trap that would leave Lucia not only jobless, but accused of a crime she hadn't committed. A trap from which escape would be nearly impossible. The storm was just beginning. That night, as the mansion slept, Isabel received a visitor at the back door. It was Fernando, a tall man in a dark suit with eyes like ice, a lawyer by profession, a criminal by calling. He had been Isabel's secret accomplice for years, the cold, calculating mind behind her every scheme. They retreated to the study, far from prying ears. "The old woman is better," Isabel said, pouring herself a whiskey with trembling hands. "I don't understand. The doses were perfect. In a few more weeks, she should have been dead. And instead, she's out walking in the garden like a teenager." Fernando narrowed his eyes. "Someone switched the medicine," he said calmly. "That's the only explanation. Someone discovered your plan and replaced the poison pills with the real ones." Isabel paled. "The maid," she murmured. "The maid with the green eyes. She goes into the old woman's room. She gives her the medicine now. It had to be her." "Then your maid knows too much," Fernando concluded. "And if she knows about the medicine, it's only a matter of time before she gathers evidence and accuses you. We have to neutralize her." "Now? How?" "I can't just fire her. Doña Esperanza adores her, and that meddling gardener defends her." Fernando smiled, and it was a smile that chilled the blood. "You're not going to fire her," he said. "You're going to ruin her. We'll make it look like she's a thief. I have a diamond necklace from my latest acquisition. Tomorrow, you'll hide it among her things in her service room. Then, you'll discover that a valuable family jewel is missing. You'll call the police, they'll search her belongings, find the necklace, and the honest, brave maid will end up in handcuffs on her way to jail, where no one will ever believe a word she says about you again." Isabel looked at him with wicked admiration. "You're brilliant," she said. "A jailed thief is no witness to anything, and if the old woman defends her, we'll say the maid manipulated her into stealing." "Exactly, and you'll get rid of the problem at its root." Fernando placed the diamond necklace on the desk. "Tomorrow at noon, I'll alert a contact in the police, so everything goes smoothly." Isabel picked up the necklace and contemplated it under the light. The stones glittered like her greed-filled eyes. "Poor maid," she said with false pity. "So brave, so good. What a shame she got involved where she shouldn't have." At dawn, Isabel executed her plan with surgical precision. Taking advantage of Lucia's busyness serving breakfast, she slipped into the girl's small service room. The room was tiny, barely a cot, a chair, and a small canvas suitcase where Lucia kept her few belongings. Isabel opened the suitcase, hid the diamond necklace among the maid's humble clothes, and closed it again, all in less than a minute. She left without anyone seeing her, a satisfied smile on her face. At noon, Isabel's screams echoed throughout the mansion. "I've been robbed! The Velasquez family emerald necklace is missing! A necklace worth a fortune! Someone stole it!" Chaos erupted. Doña Esperanza descended, leaning on her cane. The servants gathered in the main hall, frightened, and then the police arrived. 2 officers who conveniently arrived in record time. "I know who did it," Isabel declared to the officers, pointing an accusing finger at Lucia. "This maid arrived recently. She has no reliable references, and she's been behaving suspiciously, always lurking around, going into rooms. Search her room. I'm sure you'll find the necklace." "I didn't steal anything," Lucia protested, as white as a sheet. "I'm innocent. I would never touch something that isn't mine." "We'll see about that," one of the officers said. "Accompany us to your room, miss." Doña Esperanza stepped forward indignantly. "This is absurd. Lucia is incapable of stealing. I vouch for her. She's the most honest girl who has ever set foot in this house." "With all due respect, madam," Isabel said with venomous sweetness, "you are old and you get attached easily. You don't know these people like I do. Appearances can be deceiving." They all went up to the service room. The officer opened Lucia's suitcase and, before the girl's horrified gaze, pulled a glittering diamond necklace from among her clothes. "Is this the necklace, miss?" the officer asked. "Yes, that's it," Isabel exclaimed with feigned relief. "I knew it, thief." Lucia felt the world crumble beneath her feet. "I never put that there," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "It was planted on me, Doña Esperanza. Believe me, please. It wasn't me." "I believe you, my child. I believe you," the old woman said, weeping. But her fragile voice had no power against the machinery Isabel had set in motion. "Miss, you are under arrest for theft," the officer said, pulling out handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." At that moment, Mateo burst into the room. He had heard the commotion from the garden, and came running, still in his overalls and cap. "Wait," he shouted. "This is a trap. That jewel was planted. Lucia is innocent." Isabel turned to him with disdain. "Ah, the smitten gardener. Of course. You defend her. Officers, ignore this servant. He's nothing more than the thief's sentimental accomplice. If they continue to bother you, arrest them both." Mateo clenched his fists. It was the moment. He could reveal his identity right then and there, with a single sentence. "I am Mateo Velasquez, the owner of this house, and this woman is a fraud." But something stopped him. The lab results hadn't arrived yet. If he revealed his identity now, without the proof of the poisoning in hand, Isabel would twist the story, play the victim, claim he had lost his mind over the maid. He needed the complete evidence to destroy her once and for all, and he needed that evidence to be irrefutable. He made a heartbreaking decision. "Lucia," he said, looking her in the eyes with an intensity she didn't understand, "listen to me. This will be resolved. I swear it on my life. Hang in there. I won't abandon you. Do you hear me? Whatever happens, I'm going to get you out of this." Lucia, as the officers cuffed her, looked at him with eyes full of tears and a silent question. "Why don't you do something if you claim to have so much power?" "I trust you," she whispered, repeating the words he had told her in the greenhouse. "God help me, but I trust you." And they took her away. In the patrol car on the way to the station, Lucia looked out the window at the city streets, blurring through her tears. She thought of her sick mother back in the village, who depended on the money she sent. What would become of her now that her daughter was in jail, accused of being a thief? She thought of Doña Esperanza, defenseless again in the hands of that woman, and she thought of the gardener, of that mysterious man who had sworn to save her, but who at the decisive moment had frozen, looking at her. "Trust me," he had told her so many times, and she had trusted. She would have been a fool. He would have deceived her too. At the station, they put her in a cold gray cell with two other women with hard gazes. Lucia sat in a corner, hugging her knees. Never in her life had she felt so alone, so humiliated, so lost. She was poor, yes. She had cleaned floors and endured contempt her whole life. But her honor had always been the one thing no one could take from her. And now, even that had been snatched away with a lie. "I am innocent," she whispered to herself, clinging to those words like a lifeline. "I am innocent. God knows I am innocent." And in the darkness of that cell, only one thing kept her standing. The memory of those dark eyes and the promise they had made. "I won't abandon you." She wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. The image of Lucia, handcuffed, getting into the patrol car with her head held high, despite the humiliation, had seared itself into Mateo's soul. Beside him, Doña Esperanza wept inconsolably. "This is wrong, my son," the old woman murmured, not knowing she was speaking to her own son. "That girl is innocent, I know it. A mother knows these things." Isabel, satisfied, watched the scene from the window with a glass of wine in her hand. "One problem," she murmured to herself. "Now only the old woman is left, and then the entire Velasquez fortune will be mine." But what Isabel didn't know was that that very afternoon, in a private clinic on the other side of the city, a messenger was delivering an envelope to a man. Inside were the results of the laboratory analysis, the scientific and irrefutable proof that Doña Esperanza's medicine had been contaminated with a toxic substance designed to cause slow, silent cardiac failure. And the man receiving the envelope was not a gardener, he was Mateo Velasquez. And for the first time in weeks, his face reflected not pain, but a cold, determined fury. He had the proof, he had the weapon, and now he was going to use it to do two things: free the woman he loved, and bring down Isabel Montenegro with the full weight of the truth. The time to take off the mask had arrived. That same afternoon, Mateo moved with the speed and power of someone who, despite his gardener's overalls, was the owner of one of Mexico's largest fortunes. He made calls, he pulled strings. His personal lawyer, a truly upright man named Licenciado Robles, appeared at the police station with a warrant and bail. But Mateo gave him precise instructions. He was not to reveal who was behind the release yet. Not yet. Meanwhile, Mateo gathered everything: the lab envelope with the poisoning evidence, the records from the pharmacy where Isabel had bought substances under a false name that his private investigator had traced, and the testimony of Rosa and Carmen, the cooks, who had seen Isabel leaving Lucia's service room just before the supposed theft. Carmen, moreover, had found something crucial: the empty case of the stolen necklace hidden in Isabel's own room. The trap was exposed. As night fell, Lucia was released from the station. A car was waiting for her, and inside, to her surprise, was Licenciado Robles. "Miss Hernandez, I am a lawyer. I come on behalf of someone who believes in your innocence and has paid for your freedom. He asked me to take you back to the Velázquez mansion." "On behalf of whom?" Lucia asked, bewildered. "You'll know soon," the lawyer replied with an enigmatic smile. Lucia's heart skipped a beat. There was only one person who always spoke to her with those same words: the gardener. But how could a gardener pay for lawyers and bail? The pieces began to turn in her mind. The money for the medicine, the lab analysis, the cultured way of speaking, the hands without calluses, the authority with which he had stopped Isabel's hand, and that phrase the lawyer repeated: "someone who believes in your innocence." Lucia felt a shiver run down her spine. Could it be possible? Could the gardener be someone much more important than he appeared? "Tell me at least one thing," Lucia asked the lawyer, as the car sped along the dark road. "How is Doña Esperanza, the old lady of the house?" "I have a bad feeling. Please, tell me she's okay." Licenciado Robles's face darkened. "I haven't had any news of the lady since this afternoon," he admitted. "But my client asked me to bring you back urgently. He was in a great hurry to return to the mansion." Lucia's blood ran cold. See, Mateo had been in such a rush, it was because something terrible was about to happen. Isabel was finally alone with Doña Esperanza and Lucia out of the picture. Nothing could stop the killer now. "Faster, please," Lucia pleaded. "We have to get there now. The lady is in danger." Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the night had turned sinister. Isabel, believing her path was clear, decided to deliver the final blow to Doña Esperanza. With Lucia imprisoned and the gardener neutralized, no one could stop her. She ascended to the old woman's room, a glass of warm milk in her hands. Dissolved within it was a massive dose of the toxic substance. This time, it wouldn't be a slow poison. This time, it would be definitive. "Here's your milk, my dear," Doña Esperanza said in a syrupy voice, "so you can sleep well. It's been such a difficult day." The elderly woman, seated on her bed, eyed the glass with suspicion. Something inside her, that maternal instinct God bestows, screamed at her not to drink it. "I'm not thirsty, mija," she said. "Leave it on the nightstand. I'll have it later." "No, no," Isabel insisted, bringing the glass to her lips with a strained smile. "Drink it now while it's warm." "I'll hold it for you." "I told you I don't want it," the old woman retorted with unusual firmness, pushing the glass away. Isabel's face contorted. The mask of sweetness fell away completely, revealing the real woman: cold, cruel, desperate. "Stubborn old woman," she spat. "You know what? I'm sick of pretending, sick of smiling at you, of taking care of you, of putting up with your infatuated son and your house full of useless servants. You're going to drink this milk, whether you like it or not, and tomorrow you'll wake up peacefully dead in your bed. Your heart, they'll say, your age, and no one will suspect a thing." Doña Esperanza looked at her with horror, finally understanding the whole truth. You've been poisoning me," she whispered. "The medicine, the weakness. My God, the maid was right. You want to kill me." "Of course I want to kill you," Isabel shrieked, losing all control. "I've endured this farce for 2 years to get my hands on the Velázquez fortune. Your son is a lovesick imbecile, easy to manipulate, and you're the only obstacle left. Drink the milk." They struggled. The old woman, with the strength desperation grants, managed to knock the glass to the floor, where it shattered. The poisoned milk spilled across the marble. "Help!" Doña Esperanza cried with all her might. "Help me!" She wants to kill me. Isabel, beside herself, grabbed her by the neck. Shut up, old woman, just shut up. At that precise moment, the mansion door burst open. Lucia had arrived. Hearing the screams, she raced up the stairs, her heart in her mouth, and burst into the room just in time. Let her go! Lucia roared, lunging at Isabel and pulling her away from the elderly woman. The two women fell to the floor, struggling amidst the broken glass. Isabel, blinded by fury, got up and cornered Lucia against the wall. You, she hissed. Meddling maid, how did you get out of jail? You ruined everything. I'm going to kill you too. She raised her hand, and a sharp fragment of the broken glass glinted in it. Lucia raised both arms to protect herself, defending herself bravely, positioning herself between the killer and the old woman, who wept huddled on her bed. You're not laying a hand on Doña Esperanza, Lucia shouted, meeting her aggressor's gaze without flinching. You'll have to go through me first. The struggle moved to the hallway and then downstairs to the mansion's grand marble kitchen. There, under the chandelier lights and beside the large windows overlooking the garden, the final confrontation erupted. Isabel, her red dress torn and her face contorted with hatred, cornered Lucia against the counter. You're going to die here, just like the old woman, Isabel snarled, brandishing the glass shard, ready to strike. Lucia, her cheek marked and her lip bleeding from the struggle, didn't lower her gaze. She raised both hands in a defensive gesture, with a disarming calm and courage. I'm not afraid of you, she said. God is on my side, and the truth is too. Doña Esperanza, who had followed them down, leaning against the wall, wept, seated in the corner of the breakfast nook, covering her mouth with a trembling hand, witnessing in terror how that humble girl in the blue uniform risked her life to protect her. And then a figure appeared in the kitchen doorway. The gardener, Mateo, in his green overalls cap and yellow gloves, froze at the entrance. He surveyed the scene. Isabel about to injure Lucia, his mother weeping in the corner, the broken glass, the poisoned milk. For a moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. Isabel, Mateo said, his deep voice echoing through the kitchen. Drop it now. Isabel turned towards him, gasping, her eyes wide. You don't give me orders, you piece of shit gardener, she yelled. Get out of here before I cut you too. No, Mateo replied, taking a step forward, his voice growing firmer, more powerful, shedding all pretense of humility. You're going to drop that glass. You're going to get away from those two women, and you're going to listen very carefully to what I have to say. Something in his tone made Isabel hesitate. That authority, that presence. He wasn't a servant. Impossible. Who do you think you are? She stammered. Mateo brought his hands to his cap. Slowly, he removed it. Then, he ripped off the false beard that had completed his disguise for weeks. And finally, under the chandelier light, his true face was revealed. The face Isabel knew perfectly. The face of the man she was going to marry. Mateo, Isabel stammered, backing away, the glass shard falling from her hand and shattering on the floor. You're the gardener. I am Mateo Velasquez, he said with chilling coldness. The owner of this house, the son of the woman you tried to murder, and I've been here disguised, watching you for weeks. I've seen everything, Isabel. Absolutely everything. Doña Esperanza stifled a cry from her corner. Son, Mateo, the gardener, it was you all this time. And Lucia, her hands still raised, felt the ground open beneath her feet, as she finally understood who the man she had fallen in love with truly was. The humble gardener didn't exist. He was the millionaire, the heir, the owner of everything. And the truth, held back for so many weeks, was about to explode like a storm over Isabel Montenegro's head. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Only Doña Esperanza's broken sobs from the corner and Isabel's ragged breathing could be heard as she retreated step by step, unable to believe what her eyes were seeing. No, it can't be, Isabel stammered. You've been living here disguised as a servant for weeks, cleaning the garden, taking orders. Why? Why would you do something like that, Mateo? Mateo took a step forward, finally shedding the dirt-stained overalls. Beneath them, he wore simple clothes, but his posture, his gaze, his voice were now those of a powerful man who had reclaimed his rightful place. Why? He repeated with a terrible calm. Because something within me told me that the woman I was about to marry was not who she appeared to be. You've been smiling at me for 2 years, calling me love, planning our wedding, But my instinct never stopped screaming to me that something was rotten, so I decided to discover the truth in the only way possible, by becoming invisible, by becoming the servant you would never look in the eye. And from that invisibility, Isabel, I saw your true face. Isabel swallowed. Whatever you think you saw, you're mistaken, she tried, regaining her victim's tone. Love, I love you. That maid attacked me. The old woman is confused. I was just bringing her milk. Enough, Mateo roared, his cry making the glass tremble. Don't you dare keep lying. The masks are off. Today they all fall, starting with yours. He pulled the laboratory envelope from his trouser pocket. He held it aloft for all to see. Do you know what this is, Isabel? It's the result of the analysis of the pills you tampered with. My mother's medicine, contaminated with a toxic substance designed to cause a slow, silent cardiac arrest, which anyone would attribute to age. His voice broke for a moment of pure rage. You've been poisoning my mother for weeks, day after day, smiling at her as you killed her. Doña Esperanza stifled a sob. It's true, the old woman murmured. She just confessed. Before you arrived, she told me to my face that she'd been pretending for 2 years to get the fortune, that I was the last obstacle. She tried to force me to drink that milk. That girl, Lucia, saved my life again. She gestured to the broken glass and the puddle on the floor. Mateo looked at Lucia. The girl still stood by the counter, her blue uniform torn, her lips split, her cheek bruised, and despite it all, her head held high, her green eyes shining with a dignity that disarmed him. Lucia, he said, his voice softening completely. Forgive me. Forgive me for not telling the truth sooner, for letting them take you to jail, for every humiliation you suffered without my openly defending you. He paused, overcome. I had to wait. I needed the evidence to be irrefutable, because I knew that if I acted prematurely, this woman would escape with everything. But not a single second did I stop believing in you, admiring you, or... Lucia felt her heart explode with 1,000 conflicting emotions. The relief of being vindicated, the pain of having been imprisoned, the confusion of discovering that the humble gardener was actually the owner of everything, and a deeper feeling she dared not name. You lied to me, she said, her voice trembling. All this time I trusted a gardener, and it turns out he was the boss, the richest man in the house. I lied to you about my name and my position, Mateo admitted, but I never lied to you about what I felt. Every word I told you in that greenhouse, every time I defended you, every time I looked at you, that was real, more real than anything else in my life. The moment was shattered when Isabel, seizing the distraction, tried to flee towards the door. Not so fast. Mateo blocked her path. Robles, call the police. The real police, not the corrupt ones Fernando bought. They're already on their way, Mr. Velasquez, replied Licenciado Robles, who had entered after Lucia. And I bring with me the rest of the evidence. The pharmacy records where Isabel bought the poison under a false name, the empty jewelry box found in her room, and the signed testimony of Rosa and Carmen, who saw her plant the jewel in Lucia's room. Isabel's face crumpled completely. She was cornered. All exits were closing one by one. You're lying! All of you are lying! She shrieked in a last desperate attempt. That maid seduced your mother. Fernando! Fernando will help me. He has connections. Fernando! Mateo smiled coldly. Your accomplice was arrested an hour ago. My investigator followed him for weeks. He confessed everything in exchange for a reduced sentence. The poisoning plan, the forged inheritance documents, the stolen necklace. He turned you in, Isabel, as rats always do when the ship sinks. Isabel fell to her knees on the marble, amidst the shards of glass and spilled milk. The perfect mask she had constructed over years was shattering before everyone's eyes. She was no longer the elegant fiancée, the angelic bride. She was a desperate, exposed, defeated woman. Mateo, please, she pleaded, changing tactics, fake tears flowing at will. I did it for us, for our future. Your mother is old. She was going to die anyway. I just wanted us to be together, to have everything we deserve. Don't you dare, Mateo cut her off with glacial disdain. Do not taint the word love with your mouth. Love does not poison. Love does not slander. Love does not send an innocent woman to jail, Lucia pointed out. That is a woman who truly loves. A woman who risked her freedom and her life for an old woman who wasn't even her family. You don't even come close to her heels, Isabel." At that moment, the blue and red lights of the patrol cars illuminated the mansion's windows. The real police had arrived. 2 officers entered the kitchen, this time without the corruption of the first arrest, with a warrant signed by a judge based on the evidence presented by lawyer Robles. "Isabel Montenegro," declared the commanding officer, "you are under arrest for attempted homicide, poisoning, slander, and forgery of documents. You have the right to remain silent." As they cuffed her, Isabel shot a final hateful glance at Lucia. "This isn't over, CCO." "It is over," Lucia replied serenely. "Because the truth always wins, sooner or later, but it always wins." They took her away, and as the patrol car drove off with the killer inside, a silence of relief spread through the mansion. In the hallway, the entire staff had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Rosa, Carmen, and all the other servants who for weeks had seen Lucia humiliated, accused, and dragged to jail, now watched the scene with wide eyes. They had discovered 2 truths in a single night: that the humble gardener was actually the master of the house, and that the maid they had seen cuffed was, of all people in that mansion, the bravest and most honest. "I always knew that girl was good," murmured Rosa, wiping a tear with her apron. "I said it from the beginning. A face like that doesn't lie." Carmen nodded emotionally. Others lowered their heads, ashamed for having doubted Lucia, for not having stood up for her when she was accused. One by one, the servants began to understand that night they had witnessed more than the downfall of a murderer. They had witnessed how truth and goodness, no matter how trampled upon, always ended up coming to light. The nightmare was finally over. Doña Esperanza, trembling, got up from her corner and walked towards her son. Mateo ran to embrace her. "My son," the old woman cried, caressing his face. "My Mateo, you were the gardener, all this time taking care of me, protecting me without me knowing." She hugged him tightly. "I almost lost you." "We almost all lost each other. But we're here, Mom," Mateo replied with tears in his eyes. "We're alive, and it's all thanks to her." Both turned towards Lucia, who stood to the side, unsure what to do, suddenly feeling out of place in that family reunion. Doña Esperanza extended her arms towards her. "Come here, my daughter," the old woman said. "Come, my angel, you saved us both. You are part of this family now, like it or not." Lucia, moved to tears, approached. The 3 people embraced in the middle of the kitchen, amidst the broken glass and the remnants of the poison, which would never harm anyone again. But the story wasn't over, because now, with the truth finally revealed, there were wounds to heal, lies to clarify, and a budding love that would have to face the enormous distance separating the world of a maid from the world of a millionaire. And not everyone in that house would be willing to accept that the new lady of the Velasquez mansion had, until a few days ago, been the girl who cleaned their floors. The days that followed were filled with revelations. With Isabel and Fernando behind bars, justice began to unravel. Thread by thread, the web of lies that woman had woven for 2 years. Lawyer Robles appeared one morning in the mansion's study with a thick folder of documents. Mateo, Doña Esperanza, and Lucia listened attentively. "Mr. Velasquez," the lawyer began, "the investigation has revealed much more than we imagined. Isabel Montenegro isn't even her real name. Her name is Isabel Cruz, and she has a history. 7 years ago, she attempted something similar with a wealthy widower in Guadalajara. The man died of a supposed heart attack a few months after proposing to her. Nothing could ever be proven. Until now, the police have reopened that case in light of the new findings." Doña Esperanza put a hand to her chest. "My God," she murmured. "So I wasn't her first victim. She was a professional killer, a fortune hunter, who killed to inherit." "That is correct, madam," confirmed Robles. "Fernando, her accomplice, was the legal mastermind. He falsified wills, bribed officials, erased traces. Together they had perfected the method. They would find a wealthy family with an elderly or vulnerable member. Isabel would seduce the heir, slowly eliminate the obstacle, and they would take everything." Mateo clenched his fists on the desk. "And I fell for it like a fool," he said bitterly. 2 years of my life, 2 years believing I loved her, planning a wedding, introducing her as my future wife. She could have killed you, Mom. She could have inherited everything, and I would have handed it to her on a silver platter. "Don't blame yourself, son," Doña Esperanza said, taking his hand. "Those women are experts at deception. The important thing is that your instinct saved you in the end. Something within you knew the truth before your head did. That's why you disguised yourself. That's why you discovered everything. It wasn't just my instinct, Matteo replied, his eyes seeking Lucia. It was her. If Lucia hadn't seen Isabel tampering with the medicine that night, if she hadn't had the courage to act, today we would be burying you, Mom. I discovered the suspicions, but Lucia discovered the proof and risked everything for a family that wasn't hers. Lucia lowered her gaze, blushing. Anyone would have done the same, she said humbly. No, Doña Esperanza replied firmly. Not anyone. Most would have stayed silent out of fear. Most would have looked the other way to avoid trouble. You didn't. You chose to do the right thing, even if it cost you your freedom. That, my daughter, is something you don't learn. You are born with it. Lawyer Robles continued with the revelations. The diamond necklace with which Lucia had been framed turned out to be stolen from another of Isabel's victims. The inheritance documents that Fernando had begun to forge were intercepted and annulled, and the corrupt contact in the police, who had facilitated Lucia's unjust arrest, was suspended and placed under investigation. Is there anything else you need to see, Mr. Velasquez? Added Robles, pulling a document from the folder. This is a false will. Fernando had drafted it and was about to have his mother sign it, taking advantage of the moments of weakness the poison caused her. In this document, Doña Esperanza supposedly left her entire personal fortune to Isabel in the event that you died before her. A chill ran through the room. Before me? Matteo asked, paling. Yes, the lawyer replied gravely. We found correspondence between Isabel and Fernando. The plan didn't end with your mother's death, Mr. Velasquez. Once married, you too were going to suffer an accident. A tragic accident that would leave the widow Isabel as the sole heir to the entire Velasquez empire. You weren't the fiancé, you were the next victim on the list. Doña Esperanza stifled a cry and clung to her son's arm. Lucia covered her mouth in horror. Matteo remained silent, absorbing the magnitude of what they had escaped. So, he finally said, his voice hoarse, disguising myself as the gardener not only saved my mother, it saved me. That is correct, confirmed Robles. If you had married that woman, believing her to be an angel, neither of you would probably be alive today. Matteo clenched his fists on the desk. One more thing, Mr. Velasquez, said Robles. The theft case against Miss Hernandez has been completely dismissed. Your name is cleared. In fact, since you were a victim of fraudulent arrest, you are entitled to compensation. I don't want any compensation, Lucia said immediately. I just wanted the truth to be known, for my honor to be cleared. That's all I have in this life, my honor. And now I have it back. That's worth more than any money. Matteo looked at her with growing admiration. How was it possible that this girl who had nothing material rejected compensation, while Isabel had been capable of killing for money? The contrast couldn't be more brutal. That afternoon, the news spread throughout the house. The servants, who for weeks had been silent witnesses to the humiliations against Lucia, gathered in the kitchen, this time not to gossip, but for something different. Rosa, the cook with calloused hands, spoke on behalf of everyone. Lucia, she said, her voice breaking, we owe you an apology, all of us. When that woman accused you of being a thief, none of us stood up for you. We were afraid of Isabel, afraid of losing our jobs. We left you alone, and you, instead, risked everything for the lady, for all of us. Forgive us, girl. Lucia felt a lump form in her throat. She hugged Rosa, then Carmen, and the others. There's nothing to forgive, she said. We all get scared sometimes. The important thing is that now we're on the same side, on Doña Esperanza's side, on the side of truth. Meanwhile, in jail, Isabel received her first visit. It was her court-appointed lawyer who brought her bad news. The evidence is overwhelming, he told her. The toxicology report, the witnesses, Fernando's confession, the reopened Guadalajara case. There's no way to win this trial. I recommend pleading guilty to reduce your sentence. Isabel, stripped of her designer clothes and dressed in the gray uniform of the inmates, slammed the table in fury. This is that maid's fault, she spat. A starving nobody, a fourth-rate servant. How is it possible that she defeated me? I, who tricked millionaires, lawyers, entire families. Perhaps, replied the lawyer, gathering his papers, that girl had something you never did, something that can't be bought or faked. What? Isabel asked contemptuously. A clean heart, the lawyer responded, and left, leaving her alone with her rage. Back at the mansion that night, Matteo found Lucia in the garden, right in the greenhouse, where they had so often spoken in secret. The girl was contemplating the rose bushes under the moonlight. "May I join you?" he asked. Lucia nodded, but there was something different in her gaze, a new distance. "Mr. Velasquez," she said, using his formal name for the first time. "Mateo," he corrected her gently. "For you, I'll always be Mateo, the gardener, remember?" "But you're not the gardener anymore," Lucia replied sadly. "You're the owner of all this, the richest man I've ever known. And I'm the maid who cleaned your floors. What happened between us in this very spot was beautiful, but it was a dream from when I thought you were someone like me. Now that I know the truth, I understand that our worlds are too far apart. You need a woman of your class, not a village servant." Mateo felt his heart sink. "Is that what you think?" he asked. "That money defines who deserves to be loved?" "It's what the world thinks," she replied. "And the world is cruel to women like me." Mateo stepped closer, taking her hands. "Lucia, I just spent 2 years with a woman of my class. Elegant, refined, from society, and she turned out to be a soulless killer. Whereas you, a girl who arrived at my house with a single cloth bag, taught me what courage, loyalty, and kindness truly mean. If money defines who deserves to be loved, then keep the money, because I choose you. Whether rich or poor, servant or queen, I choose you." Lucia looked up, her green eyes shining with unshed tears. She wanted to believe him, but fear, the weight of a lifetime of humiliation, still held her back. "Give me time," she whispered. "I need time to believe this is real, that a man like you could truly love a woman like me." "You'll have all the time in the world," Mateo replied, "because I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait for you, Lucia, for as long as it takes." And under the moonlight, amidst the rose bushes tended by the false gardener, 2 hearts from opposite worlds began to cautiously build the bridge that would forever unite them. Though that love still had to overcome one final test: the judgment of the entire world. The day of judgment dawned gray over the city. The courtroom was packed. The press had turned the case into a national scandal. "The fortune hunter who poisons the elderly," the newspapers screamed. "The heroic maid who unmasked a killer." Lucia had never imagined finding herself in a courtroom as a witness of honor, dressed in a simple blue dress that Doña Esperanza had gifted her. Beside her, Mateo, impeccable in his dark suit, discreetly took her hand. "You're trembling," he whispered. "I've never testified before a judge," she replied. "I'm afraid of making a mistake, of them not believing me." "Just tell the truth," Mateo said. "The truth needs no rehearsal. And this time, everyone will believe you." Isabel entered the room in handcuffs, escorted by 2 officers. Nothing remained of the elegant, haughty woman who had terrorized the Velasquez mansion. She wore the gray uniform of inmates. Her hair was unkempt, her face gaunt. But her eyes, as they met Lucia's, still dripped the same old venom. The trial was decisive. One by one, the evidence was presented to the judge and jury. The toxicological analysis of the poisoned medicines, the pharmacy records where Isabel had purchased the substance under a false name, the empty necklace case found in her room, the forged will that Fernando had drafted, the correspondence revealing the plan to murder Mateo as well, and the reopened Guadalajara case, where a first widower had died in identical circumstances. When Lucia was called to testify, the entire room held its breath. The young woman walked to the stand with her head held high, despite her nervousness, and swore to tell the truth. "Tell us, Miss Hernandez," the prosecutor asked. "What did you see that night in the mansion's kitchen?" Lucia took a deep breath and, with a clear, firm voice, without hesitation, recounted every step of that early morning. Isabel's silhouette pouring drops into the medicine bottle, Doña Esperanza's growing weakness, the swapped pills, the necklace trap, the unjust arrest, and the night she returned just in time to prevent Isabel from forcing the elderly woman to drink poisoned milk. "And why did you risk so much?" the prosecutor asked. "You were just an employee, you could have stayed silent, you could have looked the other way. Why did you gamble your freedom